Hey everyone, welcome to BSR Sports Talk on BostonSportsRadio.net. I'm Aashish Sharma with Brian Roach, and we're going to be talking Red Sox offseason baseball. We're 1 week removed from the winter meetings. Obviously, a lot to talk about, Brian. A bunch of moves that they made. We'll start with Mike Napoli and Shane Victorino, each getting $3 or $39 million deals. What's your reaction to those deals?
Well, I like both of them. I think they overpaid for both players, but that's what you got to do if you're going to sign good players to short-term deals when they could make more money with more years added onto the contracts.
Yeah, no, when I first heard about the Mike Napoli signing, first of all, I was a fan of the signing. I think that Mike Napoli is going to be great here in Boston. You know, in 19 career games, he has something like a 306 career average, 7 home runs, 17 RBI. So I think he's going to be great when you extrapolate that over, supposedly 81 games at home, depending on whether or not he gets to that amount. But I do agree with you. I think $13 million a year on average for a guy like Mike Napoli is way too much. Personally, I remember when we talked about this about a month ago on the air, I was saying that he was worth maybe $6 million a year, and I still stand by that. I think he's a great player, but he's not worth $13 million a year. I think max they should have given him $8 million a year, but it just shows how desperate they were to get their man in Mike Napoli that they were willing to go that far.
Yeah, I mean, they were trying to get rid of that fourth year just so they wouldn't have to have someone aging for another year. But I actually think he'd probably be worth at least 10 million, like at the minimum, because of the way he can command a pitching staff and his power at the plate. So, I mean, sure, his average sometimes can be a little low, but it's something you're gonna have to deal with.
Right, no, I agree with you, and I mean, like, I don't think we're going to see him have an anemic batting average like 227 like he did last year in Texas. He was hurt a little bit, he missed some time. He was one of the hottest hitters on his team in the second half, which kind of, in a way, pulled his average up to 227, which really shows how much he was struggling early on. I do think he's going to give you something like a 260. Look, Fenway's a hitter's ballpark. He's going to give you something like a 260 average, 18 to 24 homers, somewhere close to 65 80 to 80 RBI. So I think he's good. I just still believe that's a little too much money. Maybe he's worth 8, 9, $10 million a year. But right, you just mentioned it. His versatility is something that that you really don't see that much in baseball anymore. I mean, first base, DH, catcher, he can command a pitching staff. He can play multiple positions. He's a good clubhouse guy. I guess ultimately that's why I liked the signing. Now, going on to the Shane Victorino thing, I think this one, we thought Mike Napoli was getting overpaid. $13 million a year for Shane Victorino? I couldn't believe that they paid him this much money, especially when he could have gotten Cody Ross for 3 years, 25. They went out and got Shane Victorino for 3 years, $13 million a year, 39 overall. I think that was way too much money, especially, considering that he had a career low in almost every aspect last year with the Dodgers after he got traded from Philly.
Yeah, I mean, he had an off year last year. I think he was hurt a lot, wasn't he? Last
I
year?
have to check that. I'm not sure how many games he played in last year, but I know he did have a bad year last year. It's possible that he was injured.
Yeah.
I'd have to check that though.
All right. So while you check that, Victorino, he's a good. He could put up 2020 if he wanted to, I
Mhm.
believe. So like if he puts up 2020, sure, 13 million wouldn't be overspending. That's probably what like Jacoby's probably going to earn that much. I mean, BJ Upton set the market, which is why Victorino got 13 million instead of
Right,
15 million. And
right.
BJ Upton isn't that great. Like he hit like 200 last year. He had an awful OBP, and he still got 15 million for over 5 years. So
Right. Well, I'm looking at Victorino's numbers right now. He wasn't hurt. He played in 154 games, had nearly 600 plate appearances, or at bats rather. And let's see, 255 average, 321 OBP, slugging 383, 11
yeah,
homers. He's a guy that float around, 10, 11 home runs at this career. I mean, he'd go through a stretch where he could give you 15 plus home runs, earlier, like, 2010 he had, let's see, 18 homers, then he followed that up with 17 homers. He's just not that type of player anymore. I mean, I never thought Victorino would be making $13 million a year, especially over a 3-year deal. I
yeah,
just feel like
maybe like 9 million, something like that. But
yeah, and I mean, we were talking about this before the show. Cody Ross was willing. I mean, I remember Buster of ESPN reported this. that he was willing to come back on a 3-year, $25 million deal. I don't know why that didn't happen. 3 years, 25, that would have been an average annual value of $5 million less than what they
Yeah. I
give.
mean,
So,
yeah, I would have rather had Ross only because he puts up more power numbers. Sure, we need another like base stealing threat, but Dustin Pedroia, Jacoby Ellsbury, Will Middlebrooks can actually steal bases too. It's not like um, they can't. And then there's Iglesias also, who won't be a big power threat, will be big on the bases, stuff like that. So
right. Right. Yeah. No, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens with Shane Victorino. I mean, apparently they're bringing in a lot of these, character guys, clubhouse guys like Mike Napoli, Shane Victorino. We'll get to Jonny Gomes. He's also another guy. But you and I were talking earlier that Shane Victorino doesn't really like the media all that much. And I don't know how that's going to work out here in Boston.
yeah, I mean, from what I heard, he's quite the let's just say like very like bad to the media. Like he doesn't like them. Maybe that's because that's why he got sent away from the Dodgers. So to the Dodgers, I mean, yeah. So maybe that's why Philly couldn't, like maybe he wanted out of Philly because of all the media attention since their season was going downhill, just as bad as the Red Sox was and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that worries me a little bit because, again, I mean, Philly, like, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Philly is not exactly the classiest city in terms of fans or media. And I know Boston, we can also be kind of categorized in that group, but Philly is on a different planet as far as that goes. And he seemed to be a fan favorite there. And then he went to LA, and I didn't really hear much about that. I mean, not that he's like a superstar player that they're going to be following him everywhere and finding out what he does, but I didn't really hear that much about Shea Victorino. And I was a fan of the Flying Hawaiian when he was in Philly, and I liked him during their World Series run, and then they made it back to the World Series. I thought, I liked him a lot. But it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works out when he comes to Boston, knowing that this isn't exactly the friendliest place in terms of media. I mean, like, if you have a few bad games here and there, you're getting grilled. This isn't San Diego. This isn't Tampa Bay. You have a few bad games, you're getting grilled. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Shea Victorino there. Now let's move on to Jonny Gomes, who did sign a 2-year, $10 million deal. Another character guy who, at least I was a little bit concerned, knowing from what I've seen from Jonny Gomes. I remember early on in his career, he was viewed sort of as a bad boy sort of guy. He obviously got into that fight with Coco Crisp in Boston during that brawl with Tampa Bay. But from what I've heard, he's a good clubhouse guy, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like they overpaid for him because I see him as just a platoon guy. Sure, him and Ross are like the similar, like at bat, they can both kill lefties, stuff like that. But like maybe that's why they went after Gomes because he was less expensive. Sure, he won't have as much like power numbers, like more home runs or anything like that, but he's worth less. Sure, they have plenty of money to spend. As of right now, they only spent like 118 million on their payroll. That includes all the guys that are arbitration eligible. And that's what I read from Peter Abraham of the Globe. That they only have 118 million on the payroll, including like arbitration, and he like overestimated on that too. So they still have money to spend on someone or like pick up a contract, stuff like that.
Right, right. No, I mean, Jonny Gomes, again, they said he was going to be, I don't think Sherrington used the word everyday player or starter, but he is going to get a fair share of games in left field. And right now, if you look at the outfield, they look set. Jonny Gomes in left field, Jacoby Ellsbury in center, and Shane Victorino in right. Yet we're still hearing, these mumbles about, the Red Sox are still interested in going after Josh Hamilton. They haven't completely closed the door on Nick Swisher. I mean, I'm hearing a little bit of, Cody Ross. There's a little bit still open for him, but I really doubt that he's coming back. I think after the way they mishandled his situation, they had a bunch of opportunities to bring him back. They go out and get Shane Victorino for 3 years, $39 million, when he was willing to come back for 3 years and 25. Cody Ross was. How do you think that makes him feel? So I
Yeah,
really doubt that.
where do you think he'll go?
I've heard that the Yankees would be interested. I think he might go back to the National League as a possibility. But,
Atlanta. I think Atlanta might be a good option for him.
Yeah, but I really think at this point, Boston has pretty much closed the door on Cody Ross. And if they are still going after Nick Swisher or Josh Hamilton, the way I see it is they have two options. Like you said, Jonny Gomes, they move into the fourth outfielder position. He's cheap, 2 years, $10 million overall contract. He's tradable. It's very easy. You can make him a fourth outfielder and then go out. Let's say if you get Josh Hamilton, you can stick him. I mean, I've seen him play left field in Fenway before. Uh, he can play all three outfield positions. So if you do go out and get Josh Hamilton to, let's say, a 3-year deal, you can stick him at left, go with Jacoby Ellsbury in center, and Shane Victorino on right. Or you just trade Jacoby Ellsbury, and you can keep Jonny Gomes in the outfield, and then stick whoever you get in place of Jacoby Ellsbury, possibly move Shane Victorino to center, and put Nick Swisher or Josh Hamilton to right field if you decide to go that route.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios that could still happen over this off season, so maybe something like that could happen. But I doubt Josh Hamilton comes here. I say he goes back to Texas. But yeah, it should be interesting to see what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, I agree with you in that sense. I've heard that Josh Hamilton is getting a lot of 3-year offers because teams are a little bit worried that about relapse. That he might get back on crack, cocaine. His drinking problem. He has a few injury problems and stuff like that. And then he obviously had some bad PR with the Rangers last year with Nolan Ryan calling him out on his pitch selection in terms of swinging. But I don't think that's a big deal. I think he's a great player. If I was the Red Sox, obviously my bigger concern is the off-field issues. And on top of that, the Red Sox have had issues with signing long-term deals. Adrian Gonzalez, who kind of faltered in his second year, Carl Crawford, who never panned out, John Lackey, all these overpaid contracts. So they would be wise to offer Josh Hamilton something like a 3-year, $60 million deal. I wouldn't be totally opposed to that. I would give Josh Hamilton a 3-year, $60 million deal, but anything more than that, I'm staying away.
Yeah, I think Adrian Gonzalez second half of the second year, because of all the situations with playing right field, and just like not ever getting situated in a spot really hurt his numbers. And Josh Hamilton 3 years, $60 million. I could see the Sox doing that. They have the money, but putting that much money toward one player, and what happens if in the first year he gets hurt?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, exactly. And then you're saddled with $40 million left on that contract, and it's a virtually I mean, who's going to pick up that much money in such a short amount of time? I
The
mean, I know the
Dodgers.
Dodgers. Yeah, exactly. I know the Dodgers kind of helped us in that regard last year, and I don't know
And
why.
they're still spending so much money. Look at what they spend on Greinke. They want Euclid.
I think Magic should stick to basketball. I don't know if he knows exactly.
Well, he's just spending his money. He doesn't want it anymore.
I guess, but yeah, I mean, like going back to Josh Hamilton, 3 or 60 million, I think is the farthest. And even then, again, we talked about this. Does this team really need to go out and spend this much on offense? They were the
No.
fourth best offense.
Yep, fourth in runs, but towards the second half of the season, they started like slipping because they couldn't because all their big guys got hurt. So
Right.
if David Ortiz is healthy, Middlebrooks is healthy, then the additions of Mike Napoli, Dustin Pedroia fully healthy, Jacoby Ellsbury for a full season, and all that equals to a good baseball team. They even have a good pitching staff. Like I know a lot of people are like, oh, look at what the Blue Jays are doing, and look at what the Rays are doing with their adding Will Myers, trading James Shields and Wade Davis away, which totally ruined their chances of winning the AL East because that was 2/5 of their starting rotation.
Right. James Shields was actually one of the most underrated starters in baseball last year, and even over the last 3 years, no one talks about James Shields. So
Yeah,
that's
well,
surprising.
I mean, what's weird is that he's like the only pitcher in the past like 5 or 6 seasons to stay with the Rays after 30 because they like to keep it young.
Right. Right.
So that's why they were looking to ship him off instead of David Price. So
Right, and yeah, I know. And David Price obviously winning the Cy Young, and with James Shields, obviously, I don't know his contract situation, but I think he was coming up on free agency, right? I think he was entering
Yes, yeah,
last.
he had like 1 or 2 years left when they traded him this year. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think they were just being strategic in that sense. Let's trade him for a prospect who will have under arbitration, under team control for another 6 years. So I mean that makes sense. But now let's move on to at Ellsbury. Almost got shipped, or at least they were talking about possibly shipping him to Philly for Cliff Lee. Now that would have been interesting. That's something that I would have absolutely done in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, Cliff Lee has been like Cy Young worthy. Last year he wasn't that good, but I think like since Jacoby Ellsbury is a Scott Boras client and his contract is basically up, um, I don't think the Red Sox are going to re-sign him. I mean, they have the money to, so I could see it possibly happening, but it would take a while since he's Scott Boras and he likes to make his money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think Ellsbury's a goner, and first of all, like you said, they have the money to re-sign him. He's not signing an extension, and I think part of your job as a general manager is to kind of gauge the interest that a player has in staying long term. I mean, Dustin Pedroia, he wants to be a Red Sox lifer. David Ortiz had no interest in leaving the Red Sox. Jacoby Ellsbury, I don't get that same sense from him. I think he'll jump ship. If someone offers him 7 years, $140 million, he's gone. Whether it's the Yankees, whether it's the Dodgers, he's gone. I don't think that – I mean, obviously that's a lot of money, so I can't speak for Dustin Pedroia in that sense either, but he has shown interest in staying here long term. Jacoby Ellsbury hasn't. So I think you have to be smart in that sense, and if the right deal comes up, you have to trade him. Now, again, that being said, trade him for someone of equal or maybe slightly lesser value. Don't trade him for peanuts. Don't throw your hands up and say, oh, Jacoby Ellsbury's gone next year, let's trade him for peanuts. No, I would rather let him walk at the end of the year next year in free agency than trade him now and get virtually nothing in return, obviously. But if you're getting a guy like Cliff Lee in return, or let's say a King Felix, which I really doubt Seattle's going to part with him, but, I mean, I know the Braves were interested. I don't know exactly who they were willing to give up in return, but in my mind, I was thinking if they're willing to give up like a Jared Jurgens or something, then
Well,
you do something like that.
Jurgens has not been the same pitcher in the last few seasons. Last year, he was up and down from the minors. I think he had anxiety issues.
Yeah, well, I mean, but my overall point is that Jacoby Ellsbury, they should hang on to him, and then depending on who they get in return, if it's the right deal, trade him. If you're not getting anything on Jacoby Ellsbury, if you're kicking the tires on a trade and you're getting like these prospects, unproven guys, hold on to them, play out next season at the trade deadline. If you're in contention, hang on to them. If you're not in contention, trade them away at the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, even if they are in contention, if they need just like that one, like pitcher, like I know they have all those pitchers as prospects, Ruby De La Rosa and that other guy. I forget his name at the moment.
Rosario, they just picked up him from.
Well, he's not a prospect. He's actually 27. I look the other prospect they got in the Dodgers deal.
I don't know. We'll have to look that up.
Oh, Alan Webster. Alan Webster. There you go.
Okay, yeah, just a bunch of names. We don't know who these guys are or what they play, but yeah,
Webster's a sinker baller, and people say he'll be good at Fenway, but then you see what Aaron Cook did at Fenway, and it wasn't that good. But
right.
They say Fenway is a ground ball pitcher, well, ballpark, but that's because how good the infield is for the Red Sox with Dustin Pedroia, Iglesias at short, and Will Middlebrooks at third. Middlebrooks is actually really good defensively, so.
Exactly. Well, actually, Will Middlebrooks, I thought that was going back to him. I think it was a little bit. He was a great offensive player, but he did kind of struggle a little bit. He's got a great arm.
At the beginning, he struggled a lot, but then as time progressed, it was really, really interesting to watch him field the ball. Especially like going to his right or going to his left.
I think he's our version of Evan Longoria long term. I see a lot of Evan Longoria and Will Middlebrooks, just their build, their swing, their stance, the way they play third base. So I'm really excited about Will Middlebrooks. But talking about Will Middlebrooks and talking about Dustin Pedroia and all these offensive weapons, Poppy, now Napoli, this team looks to be set offensively, assuming that, let's say, they do keep Jacoby Ellsbury next year and they don't trade him. Offensively, they look fine. This team needs pitching more than anything. They don't have a fifth starter. They need more bullpen help. I know this is
Yeah,
I know it's a little bit of a stretch, and we don't know what's going to happen with Daniel Bard. I mean, obviously, Junichi Tsuzawa had a little bit, but they don't even have a proper closer. I don't know if Bailey is set to be a closer next year. Like he was kind of up and down last year.
You can't judge Bailey until he starts the season as the closer, because like he was like forced into a role that Aceves was giving up because of what happened. And I agree with you that there's no fifth starter on this team. I want to see Franklin Morales in the bullpen, not as the fifth starter. Sure, he has the stuff to last 5 or 6 innings, but who wants to use their bullpen for 4 to 5 innings on the 5th day every time instead of just saving the bullpen? I mean, Daniel Bard, he's not going to be the same pitcher. I don't have faith in him, mainly for the fact, like, he couldn't even do it in the minor leagues. He was walking like 6 guys. He walked 6 guys in one appearance, and then the next he would strike out the side. It was just his confidence is broken. Like
right. I mean, Daniel Bard still has options, so they can send him back down to AAA to start the season if he doesn't prove anything in spring training. But I mean, like in terms of the pitching, they don't have a fifth starter right now. Let's see, they have John Lester, John Lackey, Felix Dubrow, Clay Buchholz. That's your starting rotation. They need a back end starter and then more pitching depth. Yeah, I don't know how you feel about this, but Brian Wilson was non-tendered by the Giants.
I actually would love to see him come to Boston because he's a New Hampshire native.
Yeah,
and he wouldn't be that expensive. I like the signing that they did with what's his name? Hold on, Koji Uehara. He's pitched in 4 seasons with the O's and the Rangers. He had a 1.75 ERA and 37 appearances for Texas last year. He is a right-hander, I believe. But towards the end of the season, last year, he fanned the side in the 8th inning against against the Angels to preserve the lead. It was like a one-run game. It was like 9-8. That was the score at the time. And he struck out the side in the 8th inning. He would be a great setup guy. I hope they don't re-sign Alfredo Aceves because of the emotional issues. But I want them to still stay with Andrew Miller and maybe Scott Atchison. Depends on how his elbow is on the when they do physicals.
Right, Atchison actually was non-tendered, I believe.
Well, yeah, no, but they can still
re-sign
No,
him.
yeah. I was saying re-sign him and Andrew Miller, who was also non-tendered.
Yeah, and then I don't know what the situation is on Alfredo Aceves. I think is he still under contract? I'd have to check that. But if he is, I would be surprised.
No, I don't think he is.
He is, yeah. So then I would, if he's a free agent, if that's true, then I would stay away from him. Obviously, for the reasons you mentioned, his anger issues. He kind of ruined a little bit of clubhouse morale there down the stretch, getting into a fight.
Yeah. So, I mean, it could be different under Bobby Valentine, but it's still kind of iffy. Because maybe he didn't like Bobby Valentine. Maybe that was it. Maybe Valentine ruffled his feathers and.
True, but I mean, if you go back to that 2012 squad, really, who on that team liked Bobby Valentine? I mean, there was a lot of lack of discipline among all the players. You saw a couple coaches.
All the minor league players who he allowed to play.
But even then, I don't know anyone I didn't hear anything great about Bobby Valentine except media members. But, Alfredo Aceves getting suspended for 2 games for conduct detrimental to the team, obviously getting into that little spat with Dustin Pedroia. I'd stay away from him. I mean, I really liked him for years that he was here, but I would stay away from him. And, like I said, they need pitching more than anything, which is why it was interesting to me that they were interested in trading John Lester to Kansas City for Will Myers, who's actually now a member of the Tampa Bay Rays. And for me, when I read that, I said, Will Myers is the real deal. This kid is going to be the next, Mike Trout or Bryce
Yeah,
Harper.
that's what they're saying. Like offensively, he's good, but I've heard things like he's not that good defensively yet. To like
Right.
he's only shown it for 1 year in the minors anyway. So it's not like it's the real deal when you can do it for 2 to 3 straight years.
Right.
That's what I think. And I mean, Mike Trout, he did it for a year and a half in AAA. So they were like, all right, you can come up now. And so maybe Will Myers will start in the minor leagues for the Rays, but then he'll be called up and he'll be able to he'll be good. But I still think it was a bad deal for the Rays only because now they have to use more of their young starters and their rotation won't be the same. Sure, they have David Price at the start, but who will follow that?
Right. No, that's a good point. But just thinking about it, John Lester, to me, while he has not yet broken into that elite company of CC Sabathia or Justin Verlander, I believe that he's right maybe 2 steps below that. And yeah, he had an off year last year, but he has shown us that for stretches he could be one of the most dominant pitchers in the American League, in the American League East, which is the toughest division in baseball. So yes, he had a bad year last year, but I'm not willing to give up on John Lester for more offense when this team's primary concern is getting more pitching rather.
Yeah, I mean, there were some starts at the end of the year where he looked like the old John Lester, like for 5 or 6 innings against the Yankees, when they were actually playing good offensively. And since the Yankees are getting so old, it's going to be even easier to face the Yankees. Baltimore won't be as good because they lost Mark Reynolds to the Indians, and the only team that really scares me is the Blue Jays because of the deal they made to really bolster their pitching staff and their offense with Jose Reyes and Emilio Bonifacio, who's and Bonifacio is really underrated, but he's going to be a base stealing threat that's going to wreak havoc on the AL East. He's going to steal so many bases that no one's going to be able to keep up with him.
And they've already got a couple guys named, Jose Bautista. They've got
Edwin Encarnacion.
Exactly, and I think JP Arancibia is kind of underrated. I think he's a good player.
I've heard they might trade him because they have that prospect Mike Dendro. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Right, and then they also have a third baseman who was a second-year player last year, who's apparently, I forget his name, but he's apparently been making a lot of noise for the Blue Jays. He's a fan favorite. I'll have to look up his name, but yeah, no, the Blue Jays do look pretty scary next year. And for the last few years, I think they've been underrated. Offensively, they've been one of the best teams in the American League. So.
Brett Lowry. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, Brett Lowry.
He's really good offensively and defensively. So yeah, and then they traded away Escobar, so they had 2 shortstops. So
So I mean, look, the AL East is going to be, as usual, a very tough division next year. I mean, you've got
even tougher. Like the Orioles will probably still be decent. Like I would say 91 wins the AL East because they'll be beating up on each other.
Right. It's gonna be pretty cool to see if that happens. 91 wins. It used to be you have to get 98, 99 to win the wild card if you're in the American League East.
Yeah. And also it's a good thing that the Houston Astros are now in the American League because now we get to face them 6 times a year in the Astros. They haven't done one thing this offseason. I don't know what's going to happen. I want to see them sign Josh Hamilton just so to make it a little interesting. Sure, that's their whole payroll, but
yeah, no, I mean, and again, next year baseball is going to be a little different because there's going to be interleague every day. Now that we have.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, it looks so weird. I think towards the end of the season, the Red Sox head to Colorado.
Something like that.
In September, they head to Colorado.
Yeah, so we're gonna have potential World Series matchups in September. That'll be kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah, I believe the Red Sox also go to Petco in July, or like the San Diego Padres come to town or something.
That's gonna be weird. Like for us, we're used to seeing interleague in like June, but now we're gonna be seeing it like August, September, every year, every month, April, May, June,
Yeah,
July.
there's like I think there's like 2 series per month, like basically. Like I think there's one in June, two in July, a couple in August, and a couple in September. So
That'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I don't mind interleague. I mean, for me, and I think we've talked about this before. I look forward to interleague at the beginning of interleague, but then midway through near the end, I'm like, you know what? I just want my American League ball back.
yeah, I like when they do. I think I like this a lot better because they'll be switching, and like some weeks, like some teams will be doing National League ballparks, and some other weeks that it'll be like interleague play, and other weeks it would just be American League and National League. So it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, no, and I think what's actually going to end up happening, and I know a lot of managers don't like having to change, their style of managing between series depending on who they're playing, American League or National League. I think what's going to end up happening is maybe not next year, or the year after that, but I think pretty soon the National League is going to adopt the DH. They're going to adopt American League rules. It's just you can't have two different styles of baseball. It just creates so many problems. I think eventually it's just going to happen.
I actually kind of like it. I mean, seeing like Strasburg just rip a ball down the line, and Jordan Zimmerman, who's actually like the Nationals have really good hitting pitchers for some reason.
Right, but that's the exception. I mean, who really wants to see
Josh
a guy
Beckett, Josh Beckett hitting home runs.
really hits a home run? It's crazy. But I mean, who wants to see a pitcher, for the most part, the average major league pitcher who plays in the National League? The number 9 man comes up, he ends up striking out on 3 pitches. I mean, really, who wants to see that? You want to see more offense. You want to see more battles.
It's good for fantasy.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm sure fantasy owners love that. But then you have to do the double switches. You have to pull guys. Oh, wait, it's late in the ball game. We have to pull our pitcher because he's coming up to bat. Oh, it's too bad because he only has 85 pitches. He could still go, no, but we need runs. We need to pull him down. It's just, I mean, maybe I'm a little biased because I've grown up with an American League style of baseball with the Red Sox over the last 23 years. Maybe, if I grew up watching, some National League ball, I wouldn't mind it so much, but I really do think that eventually they're going to
Yeah,
get
when the Braves were on Turner or whatever it was, TBS, like they actually had every single game on TBS like 4 or 5 years ago. I would watch every single game,
Yeah,
and it's different. It's different style to watch, but it was actually very fun to watch. Because I like Brian McCann, but
yeah, I like Ryan McCann too. But I think as we've grown up with an American League style of baseball, an American League brand of baseball, so I don't know if I'll just say if I was the commissioner, I'd be making that change right now. An American League brand of baseball adopted across the league. I just think that's the right thing to do. So
yeah.
we'll see. Let's just give this a try. Let's see how these first couple of years of interleague every day goes, and let's see if it does create problems. Because I know that's an issue for managers. But it'll be interesting to see. Now, before we sign off, the Red Sox obviously did make some minor moves by bringing in, let's see, they claimed some guy off of Oakland that we just mentioned, Rosario,
Yeah,
who was,
he's been around the league. He actually used to pitch for the Red Sox. Let's see. Oh no, never mind. He was claimed from the A's. He's from the Dominican Republic. He posted a 1.04 ERA and 16 saves with the 2012 AAA New Orleans team in the Marlins system. So, I mean, he's decent. So, yeah, he's well-traveled in the last 2 months. He went from Miami to Boston to Oakland and back to Boston again. So,
right.
I mean, he's well-traveled over the last 2 months, but he sounds pretty good as a reliever. So,
Right, no, I definitely want to see the Red Sox continue to make more moves for more pitching because I honestly feel like, yeah, you could go out and get a Josh Hamilton, but at this point, I'm not so concerned about the offense. If they can stay healthy, they're fine. They can put up 4 or 5 runs a game. They need to, I mean, my outlook on it is why, go out and score 10 runs a game if you're going to allow 11 or 12? Because a lot of times last year, they were giving up tons of runs. So if they can go out and get that back end starter, strengthen the bullpen a little bit, I like their chances next year, given that they can stay healthy.
I think their bullpen's pretty solid with a healthy Mark Melanson, Andrew Bailey at the back end. I still believe that Bailey can be a stud closer if he's given the opportunity, because he didn't get it much last year. And then they have all their other relievers, Clayton Mortensen, Andrew Miller if they re-sign him. They have Uehara, and then they have a bunch of other guys that are from the minor leagues. So it
I don't
could
know.
be.
I'm not sold on Bailey, but maybe you're right. Maybe we didn't give him a chance last year, but I just feel like doing it.
He was it for like 2 weeks, and the season was already down the drain. So he probably was like, "All right, I won't prove anything. I'll just see what happens."
Let's hope that wasn't the case. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, obviously, it's been sort of a hit and miss offseason so far for the Red Sox, a very active one at that. But I was very lukewarm on the Victorino deal, and this is coming from a guy who actually likes Shane Victorino. I liked the Napoli signing. Jonny Gomes again, kind of lukewarm, but we'll see what happens there. But I for some reason, I do think that there's a lot more to come. I think that if they can strike gold on a Jacoby Ellsbury trade and actually get something returned, I think we can see that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens the rest of the offseason. But the Red Sox do have their work cut out for them. They need to go get that fifth starter, maybe go after Brian Wilson if Bailey doesn't pan out or if he's not in their long-term plans. But yeah, there's a lot more to be seen, I think.
Yeah, I hope they just make some more minor moves, just tweak it a little bit. I believe their lineup will be good, even if Iglesias is like a hole in the lineup, which I don't think he will, especially since he's working out with Dustin Pedroia in the Arizona Fall League. Oh, well, not in Arizona, not in the Arizona Fall League, but in Arizona. Working out with Dustin Pedroia, that should help his batting, because Dustin Pedroia, he struggled in September when he was first called up, and in April leading to his Rookie of the Year season. So.
Right. Well, there you go. That's your Red Sox offseason so far in the week and a half that it's been since the winter meetings. Obviously, the Red Sox have had a very active offseason, and it's going to continue. And, we'll see where it goes from here. But pitching, that's what they need, especially with the starting staff. And thanks a lot, Brian. I'm Aashish Sharma, and this was your Red Sox offseason recap on BostonSportsRadio.net. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks a lot.